Hey, deserving listeners, it's time to continue watching 90 Day Fiancé. Let's watch the show and see what happens.
Me and Michael have 1 month left before my visa expires. We have some issues to work out. I thought originally that couples therapy would help. But we went and Michael said that he doesn't love me. Hearing this is surprising for me.
So we didn't see the whole episode, the whole session, but we didn't see that, right? We saw him ask, "Are we still in love?" And she said, or she indicated somehow that no. And then he said, "Okay, great. Then there we go. That's our answer." So, but she's interpreting it as he told me that he doesn't love me, which, could be possible. And maybe he did say that. I don't remember.
Michael has always been pretty positive about us, but now I have doubts. Sometimes I think maybe it's just my past fears. So I'm trying to fix it by making an appointment with counselor myself.
That's great. I think couples counseling is really more important for the two of them. I think more than one session, people. Are we just going to see one session with the couples counselor? I'm telling you, that's not enough. I mean, 5, you could get a lot done in 5, but 1, not usually. But now she's going to counseling herself, and I'm guessing it's just going to be 1 session, and then they're never going to revisit it again, and I'll be frustrated. Let's watch.
Hey, Natalie.
Hi, Rachel.
It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
What's most important to talk about today?
So I will say that during the lockdown, this is the way therapy is provided these days. And it's interesting because up until the lockdown, most therapy was in person, and now all of it's online. And it's interesting to think about what's going to happen after the pandemic. Are we going to return to mostly in-person services, or are there going to be a lot of video conferences? I'll tell you, in my practice, I don't want to do any telehealth. I don't like it at all. I want people in my office. We get into some pretty intense things, and we got to be like right there. And sometimes it's good to shake someone's hand at the end of the session, and I know that they're not around any distractions. Sometimes clients will call me when they're in the car, they're driving somewhere, and it's not ideal. I set up my office pretty specifically so people will, the word that was introduced to me when I was in graduate school 25 years ago was a sacred space. A therapy office is a sacred space, meaning that it is formalized and ceremonialized and protected from the outside world, and there's a leader who makes sure that the space is conducive for therapy and for safety and for exploration and for a relationship. And so that is not easily created over Zoom.
If you say you love, you don't make pain, you don't betray it.
Like, what is she talking about?
So I have a best friend. She wanted me to be like her best man. It was the night before the wedding. I went back to the house, slept on the couch. Natalie was pretty much assuming that we slept together.
Why you said her husband is gonna be there?
Because her husband was supposed to be there. I didn't lie. That was the plan.
Okay, so for Natalie, she was really hurt by that, and she wants to recover from that, and that's fine. She was hurt, and she wants to work that out. It's going to be hard to do that in individual therapy. Now, I will say that on the Zoom call, I think it's Zoom, that you have the Natalie video, you have the therapist video, and then there's a third person with their camera off, and I'm trying to figure out who that person is. It could be a supervisor. I'd be curious as to who that was. It could also just be maybe a production, 90 Day Fiancé production person. I don't know.
I took a moment. I'm like, wait a minute. He's not at his sound. He spent the night with this lady, so he wasn't honest. He didn't say truth.
Did Mike say that there was nothing going on between them, that they're just friends, and you didn't see what you thought you saw when you walked in?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're hearing more details about what happened during the tell-all. We heard a little bit about it. We're getting more details about it. And as a therapist, I will say I'm not really concerned about the justification for her feeling of betrayal. It sounds like she had an expectation that it wasn't going to be that way, and maybe the nature of how it was revealed to her is very concerning. If it had happened and then later he's like, look, I just want to tell you before something happens that I actually ended up sleeping at her house. Nothing happened, of course. Or if she had told him, by the way, I'm going to be sleeping at her house tonight. Nothing's going to happen. But instead, the way she found out was she's talking to him and she's like, what's going on? He's half naked. All of a sudden, there's another woman. I'm going to take a shower. It's a pretty big shock to the system and will potentially be very, very hurtful, very scary. And that can be something you need to recover from. So maybe it has to do with that angle. I don't know. But the point is that as a therapist, if someone tells me this, I'm not concerned about the justification for it, whether or not I think her feelings of betrayal are justified or not. What I'm concerned about is validating her feelings. What do you want to do about it? How do you want to talk about it? Because what the public will do is they'll say, who's right, who's wrong? Oh, Mike's wrong, and she's right, or she's wrong. And that's not what therapists do. What therapists do is, what do you want? Do you want to improve the relationship? Okay. How do you want to communicate about this to improve the relationship? What do you think needs to happen for the two of you to build trust and to build warmth and affection between you?
He said that they're just friends, they're very close friends, and I react upset wrong way.
So do you believe him when he says that nothing happened between them?
I don't.
Has she and Mike ever dated that you know of? Have they ever been together?
So this is a little, I always have to differentiate between, is this a style difference between me and this therapist, or do I just not like what's going on here? Would I not recommend this? If this was my supervisee, they will show me videos of their sessions, and I would stop them and say, like, what's your point here? You seem to be going down a line of questioning. What are you trying to get at? And I'm guessing if she were honest with herself, she'd be like, well, I'm trying to figure out if she is distorted or not, if her feelings of betrayal are justified. And a lot of therapists aren't necessarily honest with themselves in situations like this because they just kind of go into this automatic response mode and they think they're doing the right thing as a therapist, but they're not. And so there's an implication that if I were the client hearing this from her, that I'd be picking up on of like, this therapist is questioning my feelings. That is not a good start to a therapist, particularly the first session. And really, it's not a good thing to do in any session, really, or any listening situation anywhere, whether if you listen to a friend, trying to investigate, are your feelings justified? It's not, it's hurtful, it's discounting, and it's really irrelevant on some level as well. What you want to do is ask Natalie, okay, you're telling me this, what do you want to do? How do you want to, and I do this all the time with supervisees or clients. They tell me a situation like this and they'll be like, okay, what do you want me to help you with? You're telling me about a situation that was very difficult for you and you've lost some trust. What would you like me to help you with? And that's important because that will tell me what to do. If they're just like, well, I don't know, I just kind of want to explore it, then I'll be like, okay, then I'm validating, I'm supporting, I'm asking questions, I'm curious, how do you feel, what's going on, have you talked about it, this sort of thing. Or maybe she'd say, well, I guess I want to talk about it with him, and I don't know how to talk about it with him because he's so quiet all the time and he's defensive. Okay, then I would say, okay, so let's talk about how you can approach him in a way that will reduce the likelihood of him being defensive. How can you approach him in a way that isn't accusational but does talk about your feelings in a way that maybe he can take care of you? Maybe you can talk with him in a way that is just you kind of saying what your experience is instead of trying to get a response from him right away. There's a lot of approaches, and I've done that work with people. But I don't know, maybe she'll get there, this therapist. Maybe there's some direction she's going in that I will get behind, but let's continue watching.
I know that they used to live for a very long time, but he never admits that they were dating. Never.
They lived together for a
Yes,
long time?
they used to live together for a long time. But he wouldn't say that.
Roommates or
Oh,
you don't know? Okay. Well, that would be important to find out because if they've ever had a relationship, it makes it even more inappropriate for them to be spending the night together.
Again, maybe this is a style thing, and if she were to be able to talk with me, she would be able to convince me that this line of questioning is therapeutic. And this doesn't surprise me. Okay, so I don't know if this is what's happening, but I've seen this happen a lot, and I've heard about situations like this a lot, where the client brings a situation like this, and then the therapist sets out to determine, is this guy a bad person or not? Did this person do something wrong? This is a triangulation. I've talked about this before, where there's a conflict between Mike and Natalie, and the therapist is being invited in as the triangulated third. And there's a temptation when you're invited in to be triangulated, regardless of the situation, to bond with the person you're talking to and sort of ostracize the other third person. So you want to, the two of them can bond over ostracizing Mike. And so she's using a word like appropriateness, as if therapy is a place for us to discuss if things are appropriate or not. And of course, if we're talking about abuse, then we can talk about that. But we're really talking about a scenario where I don't think anyone believes that Mike had sex with her. I think what Natalie is concerned about is it's just like it's just not appropriate from Natalie's point of view for my fiancé to spend the night at another woman's house, even though it was the day before her wedding and she is a good friend of his. And maybe they used to date before, but who cares? It was the day before the wedding. Anyway, as a therapist, to get into this, I am the objective judge of whether or not you're being treated appropriately by someone, is the way a friend would interact. This is the way a friend, and for good reasons maybe, of just like, well, he's a dog, he did something wrong. You got to let him have it. That's not the function of therapy. Now, if the therapist had asked her, would you like me to support you in your efforts to yell at him or confront him, then I guess this would be in line with that. But I don't, and maybe they established the goals, but it certainly didn't seem like it. So let's rewind that. Maybe I can see something in there that I can get behind.
Has she and Mike ever dated that you know of? Have they ever been together?
I know that they used to live for a very long time, but he never admits that they were dating. Never.
They lived together for a
Yes,
long time?
they used to live together for a long time, but he wouldn't say that.
Roommates or that would be important to find out because if they've ever had a relationship, it makes it even more inappropriate for them.
So this therapist's intervention is, and I always hesitate. Okay, so I don't know, but maybe this therapist is their intervention. I can't tell because, and of course they edit this pretty heavily. But from what we're being shown, it seems like the therapist, we always look for what the therapist is doing. We saw what Dave did last episode. Dave was trying to point out that they agree at times. He was asking them to clarify, what do they want out of the relationship? How do they feel about each other? It was a lot of questions, not a lot of conclusions. You didn't see Dave making conclusions. You didn't see him going, let me try to figure this out. This therapist is asking questions like, I'm trying to figure out if this is appropriate. Did he do something inappropriate? Let me determine whether or not he, and now she is saying, well, you need to find out. So a therapist, a professional, just told her client, you need to find out if they were actual roommates or they were in a romantic relationship, because that will determine if it's appropriate or not. Let's rewind that and make sure I got that right.
That would be important to find out because if they've ever had a relationship, it makes it even more inappropriate for them to be spending the night together. And I completely understand why you feel very uncomfortable with that.
Okay, so what she just said is fine to say, I can see why you would feel uncomfortable with that. Fine. But to tell her, you need to go talk to your husband and ask him if they were in a romantic relationship or not in the past. And that will determine, according to me, because I am I'm the judge of whether or not something is appropriate or not, that would mean it is inappropriate. If he had a romantic relationship with her in the past, that's inappropriate. I'm the therapist, and I've determined that. I'm exaggerating it, of course, but I'm just pointing out that it's because now what's Natalie going to do? Okay, hey, Mike, my therapist wanted me to ask you if you were in a romantic relationship in the past. Let's say Mike is like, well, yeah, I mean, years and years ago, but we became friends and we've been friends the whole time now. And then she's like, well, my therapist said that's inappropriate. Well, now what kind of a situation are we looking at?
Thank you.
You feel like you can talk to him about it?
Yes. It's a very good advice and thank you.
So Natalie seems to be taking it well in that you see that sigh. She seems to feel validated, which is important. She deserves to be validated. And her feelings are valid. And so are Mike's. Mike can also feel like, hey, I don't feel like I did anything wrong. That's also valid. Both are valid. Both are appropriate. Both are fine. Both did nothing wrong. He inadvertently hurt her. And you could say that it's a bigger pattern of his to not communicate enough, and that resulted in hurting her. He could have proactively communicated to her so she wouldn't have been as hurt. Or afterwards, he could have apologized more and listened to her more, and that could have helped as well. So yes, she deserves to be validated, and the therapist did. But there's also this message of you need to go interrogate him, essentially, and determine whether or not this is appropriate or not.
I had nice conversation with Rachel. She told me things that made me feel I'm right and made me feel more confident.
So good, you feel right, you feel validated, but do you feel like your therapist feels like he's wrong? Because that's kind of what it sounded like. It sounds like the therapist thinks he's wrong, or at least has the potential of being wrong based on this one fulcrum of whether or not they had a past relationship or not. And again, it's fine if she was upset. It'd be normal if she was hurt. How do we talk about it? And this is why they need to go back to Dave. Dave would be able to help them in the session talk about it rather than us, validating her, 2 thumbs up, giving her this message that she needs to blast him with something, which I think she's going to do. What would be the purpose of that?
The only way to fix this problem once and for all is to deal with this problem. So I need to talk to Mike about it.
Okay, so if she got that message from the session, then that's another success of the therapy. That instead of putting up the walls, as the 2 of them do, she needs to talk with Mike about it. So hopefully it'll go well.
I hope that you and Mike have some really good conversations, and I really hope that you are able to find happiness here. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Now again, there was an hour session. We only saw a little bit of it. Maybe it was just the most controversial parts. Maybe there are a lot of messages about talking with him, and then we see at the end that she is giving this message of, I hope you talk about it, I hope it goes well, I hope you find happiness together. So yeah, it's good. It's good message.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, well, that does it for that episode of Psychology in Seattle. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself, really, and take care of others, really, because we all deserve it. We really, really do.